Hello, viewers, welcome back. In previous videos we discussed about the origin of Zionism, Balfour and betrayal, the birth of a nation. To watch previous video, please click on the link in the description box. Without wasting your valuable time, let's get started. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a complex and multifaceted issue with deep historical roots. At its core lies the dispute over land and the right to self-determination. Following the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem, territories predominantly inhabited by Palestinians. Shortly thereafter, Israel began establishing settlements in these occupied territories, a move deemed illegal under international law. The establishment of Israeli settlements in the West Bank is a key point of contention. These settlements, viewed as illegal by the international community, have expanded over the decades, often encroaching on Palestinian land and resources. The settler population has grown significantly, with over 400,000 Israelis now living in the West Bank, excluding East Jerusalem. This has led to increased tensions and a fragmentation of the Palestinian territories. The presence of settlements complicates the possibility of a contiguous and viable Palestinian state. Palestinians argue that these settlements violate their right to self-determination and undermine the prospects for a two-state solution. They view the settlements as an attempt to solidify Israeli control over the West Bank and prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. The international community, including the United Nations, has repeatedly condemned the expansion of settlements and called for their dismantlement. However, successive Israeli governments have defended the settlements, citing historical and religious connections to the land. They argue that the settlements are crucial for Israel's security and that their final status should be determined through negotiations. The daily lives of Palestinians in the West Bank are profoundly impacted by the Israeli occupation. The presence of Israeli military checkpoints, restrictions on movement, and the construction of the separation barrier have created a system that limits Palestinian freedom and hinders economic development. The barrier, which Israel argues is necessary for security reasons, cuts through Palestinian land, separating communities and families. The construction of Israeli settlements and infrastructure in the West Bank has also led to the confiscation of Palestinian land and the displacement of Palestinian communities. Palestinians face restrictions on their access to water resources, with many communities reliant on water tankers and facing severe shortages. The Israeli authorities control the allocation of water resources in the West Bank, and Palestinians often receive significantly less water per capita than Israeli settlers. The Israeli military occupation has also resulted in human rights violations, with Palestinians subject to arbitrary arrests, detentions, and home demolitions. Human rights organizations have documented numerous cases of excessive use of force by Israeli security forces against Palestinian civilians, including children. The lack of accountability for these violations further exacerbates tensions and undermines trust between the two sides. The economic impact of the occupation is also significant. Restrictions on movement and access to markets have hampered Palestinian economic growth. The Palestinian economy is heavily reliant on Israel, with limited opportunities for independent development. This economic dependence further reinforces the power imbalance between Israelis and Palestinians. The Palestinian refugee crisis is one of the most enduring legacies of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The creation of Israel in 1948 and the subsequent Arab-Israeli War resulted in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes. These refugees and their descendants, now numbering in the millions, live in refugee camps and diaspora communities across the Middle East and beyond. The right of return for Palestinian refugees is a highly sensitive and contentious issue. Palestinians demand the right to return to their ancestral homes in what is now Israel, citing historical justice and international law. They argue that the displacement of Palestinians was a result of war and ethnic cleansing, and that their right to return is non-negotiable. Israel, however, rejects the right of return, arguing that it would demographically overwhelm the Jewish state. They maintain that the refugee issue should be resolved as part of a comprehensive peace agreement with resettlement options outside of Israel. The international community, recognizing the plight of Palestinian refugees, supports their right to a just and lasting solution, including the option of return or compensation. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, was established in 1949 to provide humanitarian assistance to Palestinian refugees. UNRWA continues to play a vital role in providing education, healthcare, and social services to millions of registered refugees across the region. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been marred by decades of violence and bloodshed. Palestinian militant groups including Hamas and Islamic Jihad have carried out numerous attacks against Israeli civilians and military targets. These attacks, ranging from suicide bombings to rocket fire, have resulted in the deaths of thousands of Israelis. Israel, citing the need to protect its citizens, has responded to Palestinian violence with military force. Israeli military operations in the West Bank and Gaza have resulted in significant Palestinian casualties and widespread destruction. The use of disproportionate force and the targeting of civilian infrastructure have drawn international condemnation. The cycle of violence has created a climate of fear and mistrust, making it challenging to build the necessary foundations for peace. Both sides have legitimate security concerns, but the use of violence only perpetuates the conflict and undermines the possibility of a negotiated solution. International efforts to broker ceasefires and de-escalate tensions have been met with limited success. The underlying political and historical grievances remain unaddressed, creating fertile ground for future outbreaks of violence. Section 5. A legacy of broken promises, failed peace accords. Over the years, numerous attempts have been made to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through negotiations. The Oslo Accords, signed in the 1990s, offered a glimmer of hope for a peaceful resolution. These accords were based on the principle of land for peace, with Israel agreeing to withdraw from parts of the occupied territories in exchange for Palestinian recognition of Israel's right to exist. However, the Oslo Accords ultimately failed to deliver on their promise. The continued expansion of Israeli settlements, the outbreak of the Second Intifada, and the lack of trust between the two sides undermined the peace process. The assassination of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin by a Jewish extremist in 1995 further derailed hopes for peace. Subsequent peace initiatives, such as the Camp David Summit in 2000 and the Annapolis Conference in 2007, also failed to bridge the divides between the two sides. The failure of these peace efforts has led to a sense of disillusionment and despair among both Israelis and Palestinians. The lack of progress in negotiations has contributed to a hardening of positions on both sides. The growth of the settler movement in Israel and the rise of Hamas in Gaza have made it even more challenging to find common ground. Section 6. Two states, two narratives. Can coexistence become reality? The two-state solution, with an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel, has long been seen as the most viable path to resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The international community, including the United States, has consistently supported the two-state solution as the best way to achieve a just and lasting peace. However, the feasibility of a two-state solution is increasingly in doubt. The continued expansion of Israeli settlements, the fragmentation of the Palestinian territories, and the lack of political will on both sides have made it increasingly difficult to envision two states living side by side in peace and security. The Palestinian Authority, which governs parts of the West Bank, remains committed to the two-state solution, but faces internal divisions and a lack of legitimacy among some Palestinians. The Palestinian political landscape is fragmented, with Hamas controlling the Gaza Strip and challenging the Palestinian Authority's authority. The Israeli government, under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has been reluctant to make the necessary concessions for a two-state solution. The right-wing coalition government's support for settlement expansion and its opposition to a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital have further dimmed the prospects for peace. Section 7. The weight of history, the urgency of now, impediments to peace. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is deeply rooted in history, religion, and national identity. Both sides have legitimate claims and grievances that cannot be easily dismissed. The Holocaust, which saw the extermination of 6 million Jews by Nazi Germany, has profoundly shaped Israeli consciousness and its approach to security. Palestinians, on the other hand, point to their displacement and dispossession in 1948 as a defining moment in their history. The loss of their homeland and the ongoing occupation have fueled a sense of injustice and a desire for self-determination. The weight of history continues to cast a long shadow on the present. The narratives of both sides, often presented as mutually exclusive, make it challenging to find common ground. The lack of trust and understanding between Israelis and Palestinians remains a significant obstacle to peace. The urgency of finding a solution to the conflict cannot be overstated. The status quo is unsustainable and detrimental to both Israelis and Palestinians. The continued occupation, the expansion of settlements, and the cycle of violence are all recipes for further instability and suffering. Section 8. The world is watching international actors and their influence. The international community has a crucial role to play in resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The United States, as Israel's closest ally, has a particular responsibility to use its influence to push for a just and lasting peace. However, the U.S. has often been seen as biased toward Israel, undermining its credibility as an honest broker. The European Union, the United Nations, and other international actors have also been involved in efforts to promote peace. The EU provides financial assistance to the Palestinian Authority and has been critical of Israeli settlement expansion. The UN has passed numerous resolutions condemning Israeli policies in the occupied territories, but has been unable to enforce its decisions. The Arab world, once united in its support for the Palestinian cause, is now divided. Some Arab states, such as Egypt and Jordan, have signed peace treaties with Israel and prioritize regional stability. Others, like Saudi Arabia, remain critical of Israel's policies toward the Palestinians. The involvement of external actors is crucial for mediating between the two sides, providing financial assistance and ensuring accountability. However, a lack of unity and a tendency to prioritize their interests over the needs of Israelis and Palestinians have hampered international efforts. Section 9. Charting a path forward towards a just and lasting resolution. Resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will require courage, compromise, and a willingness to break free from the shackles of the past. Both sides must be prepared to make difficult decisions and acknowledge the other's legitimate aspirations. A lasting peace agreement must address the core issues of the conflict, including borders, security, settlements, Jerusalem, refugees, and water rights. It must be based on international law, mutual recognition, and a commitment to peaceful coexistence. Civil society organizations on both sides are working to build bridges of understanding and promote dialogue. These grassroots initiatives are crucial for fostering empathy and challenging the prevailing narratives of hatred and fear. The international community must play a more proactive role in supporting peace efforts, holding both sides accountable, and providing incentives for progress. A renewed commitment to multilateralism and a focus on human rights are essential for creating the conditions for a just and lasting peace. The road to peace will be long and arduous, but the alternative is unacceptable. The future of both Israelis and Palestinians depends on their ability to break the cycle of violence and find a way to live together in peace. Thank you for watching. To support us, please do like, share, subscribe, and turn on notification bell icon. Stay tuned for more videos. See you soon.